Or a second.
Okay. And I've spoken with both Megan and Carrie, and I believe Kathy has as well. And they, I think, would like to kind of share that burden. So if, and correct me if I get this wrong, but I think what they were looking at is perhaps being co-chairs, and we would dispense with having a vice chair.
Yeah.
Just have
It's a great
co-chairs
idea.
instead of works. And then, again, she can kick me under the table if I'm wrong, but I believe Kathy has volunteered to take over for Jamie as secretary.
You start.
I will do
Can you
that,
do it
yes, I can do it now. But if you're, yeah.
Jamie, I've never seen
Thank you, Kathy.
your smile. You just lit up.
I recently resigned from the broadband committee and I was secretary at that, so
Okay,
I'm
so-
transferring that time over to
That's
this.
fabulous.
Thank you.
So,
So,
All good news, wow.
and I promised them I would do it.
She did.
They took
She was
on.
like, "You do it."
Yeah, I'll help I can.
But Megan, you're on the local. I mean, it's only 4 times a year, I know, but aren't you traveling down to Augusta?
Just once a week,
Oh, that's all.
yeah, and I can,
this is a virtual world.
yes, so I can.
Great.
Skip a week if I want to, so, very fluid.
Um,
So do you need a motion
Well,
to nominate them?
I guess before we do that, I just, are there any other
Nominations.
nominations?
Literally anyone.
They're all waiting out there. There's a crowd of people.
I wanna know, did you call them or did they call you?
She,
I asked Dan, I said, all right, Dan, what do you think? Who would you like to recommend? And he said, these two. I'm like, good idea. So I emailed these two
Oh,
to
that's
say, I
great.
think you guys would be fabulous. It would be wonderful.
Yeah, I know,
But yeah, it's passing the baton,
Right.
next generation.
During the War of 1812, they called it impressment.
We're very impressed, so it works, you know?
So now Georgianne.
I'd love to make that.
Move the slate.
Yes, I think it's
Okay,
a
is there
wonderful.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second,
second it.
okay.
Go ahead. You s-
All in favor?
yes.
Anyone opposed?
cool,
Congratulations.
thank you.
The time has passed.
Thank you all.
I have,
Yeah.
I did prepare a written thing that I will email to each of you.
Perfect.
I think it would be helpful if the two of you, Jamie and I, sat down to make sure that the
Mhm.
accounting is all square.
Yeah.
And that they understand
Okay.
the backgrounds. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's what I'm most nervous about, just to make sure I know.
There's really nothing to it except it's detailed. You just need to be aware of the detail.
We have insurance.
We have insurance. It's not rocket science, but it does require somebody to mind the store. So, I'll take on coordinating that. I'll email you guys and
So the CDC is totally, you're not resigning from that,
resign from everything.
everything.
That was
And moving on to housing,
Yes,
congratulations,
yes.
that's fabulous.
my orientation tomorrow.
Yeah,
So,
good.
yeah,
And Avery,
So I
you're
was
still on that
surprised.
committee, right?
yeah.
Yes, we are so thrilled that Dan is coming on. That's fabulous.
Yeah,
Oh, good, that's great.
yeah.
So,
And, okay,
So will you be, you're gonna join that, you're leaving that committee, you're staying on the CDC,
so
right?
the CDC,
Still has Nancy?
Nancy, as far as I know, is, yeah.
And
So,
Don,
with-
Don Graves is on
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
board as well?
yeah, and I didn't hear from either one of them prior to this meeting, but,
So you'll be joining and taking over as treasurer or? are
well,
you
they'll have to be, okay.
treasurer?
That
This,
That is
this,
separate
this,
meeting.
this group, yeah, there's gonna have to be a set, my hope was that the board of that organization would be here today, in which case you could have done it, but they're not here, so we'll have to pull together a meeting. The boards are identical, the two organizations. And, we'll just pull together a meeting to.
so this isn't the Island Housing Trust Board, this is,
Mm,
okay,
No,
Yeah, the CDC.
I'm
board.
sorry,
yeah.
And is Carrie joining the CDC board as well?
Probably,
that's,
Yeah, that's it, easy.
yeah, I guess, that,
Okay.
yeah, I would think that would be, so we have the same people. It's really the same operation, it's just
Yeah.
different entities, so,
Power elite.
okay. So, for that, we can move on to updates. And Kathy, I don't know, you say you're no longer on the broadband committee, but
Well, that's.
since you were
very
alone until
okay.
yesterday.
Welcome to a broadband committee, they dissolved.
Oh, is that right?
Well,
Yeah.
so
Oh.
on the broadband committee, we worked for quite a while to assess where the town was in terms of its goal of universal coverage. And we were so close, and so we had hired a consultant who did a driveway by driveway study of the whole town and figured out what we had where and where there were any gaps. And then worked with, as much as we could, with Spectrum and Consolidated to see anybody want to fill these gaps, et cetera. Spectrum was the obvious choice because like 96% of the town already had Spectrum coverage. So there's just a few outliers there. And then we also connected them with Acadia National Park so that Jordan Pond House could also get connection to Spectrum services, which they don't have. So far.
They don't have a cell phone out there.
And there are no lines out there, no telephone poles either, so it would be expensive for them to do it, but the concessionaire who works with the park is going to do that, because otherwise it would take an act of Congress, literally, for Acadia National Park to go into a contract with Spectrum, so. But the concessionaires can do that, so once that contract is all underway, Spectrum gave us a prize for doing the final bid. The town had money through our ARPA funds. We had about $130,000.
Yeah.
And then applied to Hancock County for additional funds to meet the whole thing. And we got about $140,000 from Hancock County, also ARPA funds that had been dedicated towards broadband.
Yeah.
So that completed it. So, and then the town has signed an agreement with Spectrum to fill those last holes.
And we actually sent them the money.
Already?
Yeah.
And they haven't done the work yet?
After they signed the contract, we sent half.
Good.
So your
Yeah.
mission fulfilled, you disbanded.
So, well, and so we're sort of looking at, the other thing was, the two goals were universal coverage, but the gold standard for coverage would really be fiber optic lines, and that Spectrum does not offer that. But they are trying to boost their service, and Consolidated, which does have fiber optic lines through Fidium Fiber, is expanding in the town anyway. So we are making an effort to encourage everybody to let Consolidated or Fidium Fiber know, yes, I'm interested. Because it's no obligation, no cost, and hopefully they'll say, oh, there are enough people interested in doing this, that they will invest their own money in outfitting the whole island with that kind of service. So then, yeah, mission accomplished. The other long-range goal is digital equity issues, to make sure that everybody who wants it has access to it, can afford it, has the devices and knows how to use it. And the library is already doing a great job with some classes. And so there might be some more work that anybody can do on that, but we thought this committee's goals were met. And so a few people thought this is the time for me to leave and move on to something else. So here I am as secretary here.
What is the speed
Quite
that we wanted? What was the speed for the,
Well, the ideal speed, according to the minimum would be 25/3. That's what's considered broadband, which is nothing. So it's all about download speed over upload speed. And the absolute minimum to be considered broadband is 25/3. What the state would like to see is 100/100. So symmetrical, just as fast sending anything out as it is bringing anything in. And Spectrum is not close to that, generally speaking, but they are moving towards that. So their upload speeds are getting faster and faster.
where would they be today, roughly? I lost track.
Well, they might have different tiers of service available. And so I think you can get 135 over like 25, 35, et
Yeah.
cetera.
You
So
can get on your computer and the Spectrum website and you can test, see.
do a
what
speed
you're getting.
test.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I
And
was just thinking from the Chamber of Commerce point of view.
Ours isn't bad. I tested it the other day.
No, but I was just thinking in terms of attracting businesses here, are we somewhat at a disadvantage because of slow, broadband? Or are we competitive?
I mean, Fidium is 100 over, at least they say they are when they get here.
it would
I
be,
don't know.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Fidium, when they get here, would be great. And I think, we use Spectrum at our office and there are 2 or 3 of us on it, plus the apartments on it, and we have no delays. It's fine service.
Good.
The problem is sometimes that Spectrum doesn't go
It
out.
cuts
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
altogether.
So we know
And
that.
that is worse in the summer times. And that was one of the things that the committee did was a survey 2 years ago in July. We sent it out with the tax bills to say, please fill out the survey. And so we asked everybody to do a speed test, let us know how it goes. And we recorded all of that data. And a lot of people were unhappy because they're making a comparison to where they live the rest of the year. And it had much higher,
Outage,
a much higher quality speed
Yeah.
right.
in other places. And they don't have the outage that we have here. And so people saw a lot of slowing down because, it's too many going through and it slows down everybody. So it was not working very well. But in some places like Kimball Shop, they have 2 different options so that if they lose one, they have a backup system.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, and that's
it's
what
a
they said
problem
years
for
ago.
existing businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, I know like when they send an email confirmation at the boats,
Mhm.
it doesn't come through for
Mhm.
many minutes.
Really?
I was thinking, because we've had this conversation over the years, is how do we attract more businesses, particularly if people wanna work remotely? And
Well, didn't you did somebody did some kind of a survey about, people who are working remotely and are you?
That was part of the
And-
survey
right,
was, are you
and-
using it
And
for
then
work
it
or
came back
school?
that there really was not that much dissatisfaction.
No,
I
there,
thought the graphics people was slow for.
it would be, because those are big things that you're trying to do.
But to the architects, for instance, they have lots of heavy duty needs and they get what they need.
Yeah, and they have Spectrum and I have never heard them say that they were having any issues.
That's good.
Yeah, Matthew Baird, for instance, in town, Bill
Bill Hanley,
Hanley,
yeah.
yeah.
I think the biggest issue, at least that I see is, personally, is just it. Flickers on and off. I mean, it just disappears for 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah,
There's no
that's
internet
right.
and then it comes back.
It's what I hear people say. I think they've been with it long enough. They just kind of joke about, well, the internet on that, and
And the other thing, from my own experience, when I first moved down here, I was still doing quite a bit of work, so I was working. Like I was at the office and it worked. It worked pretty well, even though it wasn't as fast, At some point, these speeds are not that noticeable because it's fast enough, it's.
How fast can you type?
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, my husband and I are both home all day, every day, both working from home, and,
And it's adequate.
yeah, I don't really notice an issue until it flickers or something,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah,
yeah.
so the speed is fine.
Usually
It's
just
that-
when you've been called on a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, right, it's funny how that happens, yeah.
Sometimes that's a good thing.
Okay. So I guess that overall is good news.
Not to
Yeah.
get in the way of the updates, I realized we didn't talk about potential new members. Is
Oh, we
that
didn't, right.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
wanted to chat about.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
you have a list?
I have a thought, did one for, Maud from Salt Market, I don't know if she would be interested, but I wondered if it might be good to have a new business owner,
I had suggested to her that she put in an application.
was she resistant?
No, she was not resistant
Okay.
at all.
But you may need a nudge to actually.
Yeah.
Well, she also, this actually would be a good thing for her to do because she wants to do more.
Yeah.
And there are some rules that might not allow her to expand the business the way she wants to. And so coming at it from an economic development point of view might be good information. So,
Any other thoughts?
I think we should get a list of our own together, and who wants it, do you, Megan, or who?
Yeah, Carrie and I,
Okay.
yeah,
And I should raise my hand. I should probably be stepping down too, because I've been on it almost as long as you have. And I don't even live in the town of Mount Desert anymore.
Do
So,
we have a residence requirement? Residency?
no, because I don't live here.
yeah,
We must not.
and I will happily share this with everybody, but when this used to be sort of an ad hoc committee, and then when it became a standing town committee, there was a document, we had a public meeting here in this room, and this was in September of 2019. And so at the time, we prepared some information, the purpose and mission and the organizational administration. And the recommended representation on here was 1 member from the Town Chamber of Commerce, 2 members from the Town Business Community, 1 member of 365, 3 summer residents, 4 at-large members from different villages of the town, 1 or more non-voting ex officio members, Board of Selectmen, and 2 non-voting ex officio members of town staff. So that was the idea, and it's a maximum of 15 people.
So I guess just as a new member, because certainly we have lots of people in the business community from all the villages. And I volunteered to do that. I did ask because in my experience, it's helpful when you go approach somebody if you kind of have a spiel as to what the vision is and what the goals are. And there were lots of different pieces of paper that flew around before this meeting. And I guess being a new member, I would suggest that before we go try to recruit a whole bunch of people, it would be great to kind of maybe step back and kind of synthesize some of those things again.
Yeah.
And then, when we approach people, we can, because otherwise I'd be kind of going, not, and that's my own ignorance, but.
Well, we had, now it's kind of, we can, that's, item 7 was discussion of the vision statement and potential future initiatives. And I think that's, we had a vision statement. And it kind of got confusing, a little confused, I think, because on the same document was the vision statement, and then kind of here's how we think it might be used. Which is not really part of the vision statement, that's just the, but we had a little subcommittee that came up with that several years ago. And, but I think it's probably not up to me anymore, but I would think it would be, a good idea to maybe revisit the vision statement.
And even like a few goals that, when
Right.
we approach somebody, we say, hey, here's where our
Yeah.
focus areas are, or it just makes it crisper, like, okay, yeah, I can see myself
Right.
doing that, just a suggestion.
And it could be handy to get business representation from people outside of Northeast Harbor
Agreed.
and from Seal Harbor,
Right.
Otter Creek,
Right.
I feel
Soamesville.
like there's
etc.
no residency requirement, because Carrie and I chatted about that before we finalized, and, Carrie was like, oh, I know some people who might be interested, and she's like, I don't know if they live in Mount Desert, or, so knowing that is.
But yeah, I think it's be good to
Useful.
have some connection to the town.
Well, yeah, but like they own a business,
Yeah,
but they don't,
yeah,
yeah.
Yes.
I remember, Dan, you were making the point of. Is economic development what this committee really does, or is it more sustainability?
Right. I vote, right,
Well, and again, that's a question I think we gotta answer before we go
Right.
recruit.
that's part of the vision
Yeah,
discussion,
right.
but the committee, I've always thought that it's a misnomer, and to me, the. Sustainability describes what we do, but I think there's already a
There's already a
sustainability committee, so that name's
Which is
taken.
on environmental things.
Yeah,
It's not sustaining the economy, but
Right,
it's
right.
sustaining the climate, which is,
Right.
It's not-
they need to work harder.
You're not doing a good job. It's too hard.
I think people understand more what economic development is than
Yeah, no, I
sustainability, but
think it's a
maybe.
common term, yeah.
Well, perhaps at the next meeting, that could be an item for discussion.
So Dan, I have a quick question on this whole discussion point, and that is, how many committee members do we have right now? And in which of all those different categories? So, for example, Rick and I are in the same category of summer residents, and and we have, who else is in that category? And should we also be thinking about a new generation to fill
Yeah.
those spots as well?
Right, yes to the last part of it, and I think you, Don, and Rick are currently the three summer residents, so we don't have 4 at the moment. We also don't have 2, have 1 staff person. Tony Smith was on the committee as a staff person.
Right.
Then he retired, and then he stayed on the committee for a while, and then he resigned altogether, so.
So Brian would be a logical
Yeah, if you wanted.
addition if he had time.
And Martha Dudman was a regular member and Matt Hart, but then Matt left the board. And
Right.
I don't think anybody took his place on this committee in that ex officio role.
He's
Right.
still on the.
He's still on the
He's on the
committee,
committee,
but,
right.
right, he's now a voting member, and he's now
Right.
on, he's on the boards of the other two.
CDC.
Yeah,
EDC.
Martha's a regular member?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
As
That-
an
that
ex
makes sense, yeah.
officio member as well. Yeah,
She generally participates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
During the summer, it's sort of difficult.
she's off hiking, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
But, yeah, so.
So my thinking is I would step down when we had a replacement.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, well, I think that I should, I won't speak for Don, but I think it is time to get some younger people on the committee.
There has not been a lot of turnover. There's been some, but not a whole lot. And continuity is also important. A healthy mix of the two.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
All right. Quick on the Heelway project. I've
Yay.
read I read Lincoln Milstein's version. What's your version?
Yeah. So as you may recall, we put in our application in March of 23. In October of 23, we were approved by the planning board. In November of 23, a group of summer residents appealed that decision. And on June 24th, the court handling that appeal denied the appeal and affirmed the approval. And so that's where we are now. There's a 21 day, I just checked with our lawyer before coming down here, there's a 21 calendar day window to appeal that court's decision, which would make it next Monday, July 15. And we have not heard yet, neither the town nor we have heard if there's going to be any further appeal. So we're starting to get our construction documents lined up.
Do we have an idea of how much this has cost the town? in legal
Oh, I
fees?
could tell you, I could look that up. Trouble is, I'd have to go through each invoice, but it's tens of thousands, Jamie, let's put it that way. How many tens of thousands? I'm not quite sure, because the planning board is also involved with the quarry thing, so the planning board legal budget, I'd have to go through. But I would guess at least 40,000 probably. It's cost.
Real money.
It's a lot of money and a lot of aggravation.
Yeah.
A lot of, that doesn't count staff time devoted.
No, absolutely not.
Right.
It does not. You add that in and it gets more significant, for sure.
And the delays will just increase the construction costs as well.
Yeah.
You know, prices aren't going down, they're going up. And so we anticipate that whatever prices we got a year ago are gonna be more now.
I wonder if they've never been repealed, would those be in place now, or would they be close to being in place?
The prices from last year,
Yeah, the
if we had
buildings.
gone into contract with them
Yeah.
and held them to an amount,
Yeah,
yeah.
and do you think you would have actually been in the process of actually putting them up at this point without an appeal, or?
Well, not quite yet, because I think that there is about a year delay in delivering a house once you put the order in.
Okay.
Because they only take 2 weeks to produce the house on, within the facility, because it's all modular.
Yeah.
But you put your money down and get in line, and that could take a year to have your
Yes.
house come up in that
Yes.
line. And then, once they're delivered, and then it'll take more time to finish them off, so I don't think that they would have been on site quite yet.
Right.
And I think if, in a perfect world, we could start the site work in October. That would be our goal,
That would be lovely if the appeal is not made.
right? And we should know next week if it
Yeah.
is, and so our engineer is going to start on construction drawings and have those done by the end of August. For approval by for sewer and water and power, and then we'll apply for our permits for all the site work.
Yeah.
In September, and hopefully be able to start in October.
That would be perfect. So next summer we'd have houses here.
Fall, maybe. Yeah. but we'll just keep plugging along.
Yeah, sure.
And we'll fine tune our process for identifying homeowners. And we would want to identify the homeowners, have an application process, make sure everybody meets eligibility criteria, et cetera. And then, we set a date, have so many in, have a lottery to see who's gonna be able to live in this 2-bedroom part, 3-bedroom house, et cetera. And then at that point, we would order the house when we know we have people lined up for things, so.
Did I understand? I can't remember. I heard this. If there is an appeal and let's say they win on appeal. The result would be instead of 6 housing units, be 5 housing units.
That was never clear.
Oh,
Part of the argument of the plaintiffs was that the calculation of density should have only resulted in 5. And we made the case from the start that it would be 6. Since we purchased the land and had the reviews ahead of time, our calculation said it's this much square footage. The calculations on density are based on how much land you have. If you multiply that by 1.75, you get this much, and you can have 6.9 houses or 6 houses.
Yeah.
So that's how, it was a rounding factor. It came down to that, and so ultimately, the judge in that case said, in his final decision said, there was no legal error made by the planning board in their final determinations, and there was no abuse of discretion. So where there was latitude to say, this is how you should determine what density is, they determined it, and they did not abuse their discretionary power in that space.
Okay.
Because the ordinances themselves don't say calculate it this way and round it at this point.
Yeah.
And so there's room for interpretation. And our point was always, housing is that much of a crisis situation. Everyone knows how badly housing is needed. And all of the language in determining how much space you can have was leaning towards the amount of space that you could have. And they made special allowances for workforce housing to say, where some other development, you can't count the road and you can't count wetlands and you can't count this when you're calculating how much land you have. You can count all of that when you're doing workforce housing. So clearly they were talking about the whole of the land.
Mhm.
And when the line is 10,000 square feet per home, and this is a lot that has 39,000 plus square feet, that's 3.9 houses. And so we were working on that kind of calculation. So it was never, that was what people had wanted, was to say that the board abused their or misinterpreted, and that it should only have been 5 rather than 6, and the judge disagreed with that situation.
Okay. So next week's
Keep that out.
quiet
Keep that
side,
horse to
journal,
bed.
we'll find out the answer.
Yes.
Thinking on.
Main Street project. Carolyn, I do notice every time I walk down Main Street that those lines are still there.
Still there.
I need help.
Oh.
So Brian gave me, because we had talked about, Brian giving us the contact and then having a letter writing effort. And he got the contact. I'm a little unclear, so that's why I need some help here. Because even when I emailed him, he's like, he got here late in the game too. So those of you who are like intimately familiar with this, basically he gave me this person's name who works for Consolidated, not Versant. So it's Consolidated. We
Consolidated is
wanna,
the issue. Versant's
okay,
done.
and they're owned apparently by Verizon because this address is a Verizon building. So this person works at Verizon, and basically what Brian says he thinks we should all be writing about, and I'm happy to draft this letter, and I was gonna send it out to the members on Main Street. But again, I needed to report back. He's saying that he believes that what we need to do is ask them to move the connections to businesses from the overhead wiring to the in-place underground wiring and switch over to the underground system and remove the overhead wiring.
Yeah.
That's the
That's
gist
it.
of it, right?
Pretty simple,
Okay.
actually.
But
Everything is
how
in
long
place.
do we want to say this has been going on?
Time.
Give you them.
For as long as I've been on the committee, I've got it.
Yeah.
We
Been at
discussed
least 2
this
summers, I
4
think,
times a
haven't we?
year
Yeah.
for several years.
I think you're very safe in saying it's 2023.
Okay,
That's probably being.
okay, is there anything
generous,
else
but-
you think should be in this
I would
letter
think
other
that-
than
yeah.
please?
Well, the
Okay.
project is complete, except for that, right?
Yes.
I would-
He says the project is nearly complete. A few remaining warranty items.
Yeah, like, some of the paving, in front of the 123, you get that little puddling, they're
Yeah.
gonna clear that up in the fall.
Right.
That's the only other outstanding issue besides the,
So I would say it's substantially complete.
yeah. But you might want them to throw in there, even though I don't know, it's not an economic thing, it's the safety issue of we can't use the ladder truck on all parts of Main Street.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was looking for a little more to put in here, cause I just,
I
again,
would,
sorry.
I would put that in, the fire chief is expecting. As this project was to be able to use his ladder truck on all parts of Main Street, now
And he
in certain
can't.
parts he can't because of the wires. So I would play that.
Okay, I was gonna draft something and send it to you all to read and comment on, but I just needed a few more little tidbits here.
I think Carolyn would be the key person
Yeah.
to comment on.
Yeah, send it to me and I'll look at it.
And I think, the idea that this was a very expensive project that took years of planning and implementation, and this is the one detail to get it completed, and
Yeah.
it looks bad for this company
And they
to
could
be
do
holding
it,
the whole
they
thing
could
up.
do it in a day.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
mean, they show up in the morning and by afternoon, they're little sleeves, I mean, all they have to do is take them down, run them under, put them up.
They could
And
do
it's
all
not-
this in a day?
Yeah.
Well,
But if they wanted
the
to.
wiring, the underground wiring is all in place, it just is.
They just need to make a switch.
The
Well,
screws are
and take
there.
down the overhead,
Yeah,
because that, although that, I guess it's not a big item in construction wise. I think it's a big item in terms of community perception, because that was
Sure
one of
is.
the principal goals of the whole thing was to.
Yeah.
Get rid of those wires.
Yeah.
right.
And now we're that close to having that accomplished,
Right.
and that's the only outlier.
Okay, that's what I have.
I think it's good.
All right, next item is skating rink, Jamie.
Well, not quite as rosy a picture as I've been painting all along, because the construction is not gonna happen until hopefully next spring, rather than this fall. That's not altogether a bad, well, I think it's too bad, but it's the same problems that everyone's having, which is supply chains and bidding, and so hopefully. We've asked Brian to make sure the bidding gets done now rather than waiting until January, so that we can. Because we have all the money, so we have about $730,000. We've given 500,000 to the town. And I talked to Meg, I ran into her in the post office and I said, so,
May.
May, I'm sorry. If the town isn't gonna use the money for a while, can we get the interest off it? And she said she thought that was a problem. And I said, well, what about if we asked you to give it back to us and we could put it in a CD? And she thought that was a pretty good idea. So I don't know if that'll happen, and I don't know for how long, but we have the rest of the money now in a CD. And it's for two things. One is we hope to put a simple warming hut, which can also be used in the summer for the tennis and the pickleboard people. And we're waiting for a footprint of the area so that Greg Scott can make a plan that we can then take to the harbor committee and then selectmen, and hopefully they will. It's gonna be pretty simple. And then we wanna have some kind of a fund for providing funds to the town for ongoing management of the rink. So our goal went from 500,000 to 950, and we've stopped fundraising for now just because I want to make sure before I write all these people that I know what I'm going to tell them. And so, which I would like to do soon. Cause that's a lot of money. And then we'll get back to fundraising. So we've really just, we haven't even really done a community fundraising piece
You
of
won't have any
this.
trouble getting the rest.
I don't think so. I mean, so it looks like this winter is going to be like last winter, only probably warmer and therefore less
Less than.
ice time.
You gotta go, you had a pretty good season while it was going, but
Well,
it started very late.
yeah.
Because of the war.
Yeah. And that puts Peter Bronson's job in jeopardy because he can't make enough money, just on
Right.
the ice time that we have. So we're trying to figure out some way that we can hire him as a consultant to do other things on the project because he's an important piece of this.
Is he still golf pro? It's still doing that.
But
Golf pro at Causeway, is he still doing that?
yeah, and I think that's been up and down because they had a very bad year last year because of all the rain.
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah.
I'm sorry, what does he do with the skating rink?
He's the manager and the teacher and the coach. He's taught skating and hockey all over the world. He's also taught golf all over the world. So it's a kind of a perfect fit. Golf in the summer and skating in the winter.
But he's been sort of the guy that's on site
Yeah.
running it.
Oh, okay.
And determining if it should close because the sun is too strong and the ice is getting watery, et cetera. So
Yeah, it's not just the number of days, but it's the length of the day, because that afternoon sun just hits the rink we have, which is just frozen water and melts it by
Real
3 o'clock
fast.
in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Which is when you want it going because.
After
well,
school.
right?
Right.
Well, that's the real problem.
Yeah. So we're hopeful and we're determined, but we're not there yet.
But you will get there.
We will, unquestionably.
Village golf cart proposal. Carrie and I were tasked with communicating with Meg Asher, which we did, and basically wrote her a letter, I think we may have shared with the
You
committee.
did.
Yeah, that in essence said, great idea. Why not, if we're willing to work with you, if you put something together. Haven't heard from her. So, all's quiet on that front.
I will say, and I mentioned this to Durham, you know, parking is a complaint and an issue for our businesses, and I think there's opportunity if she came forward to.
Well, businesses could do some work on that too. And I'd also, I know I'm a broken record.
I just
on
if
that,
she
on
came
your-
forward.
On your way uptown, why don't you count the number of empty parking places in that parking lot, because there are always at least a dozen.
Well, I mean, part of it's a
I know,
connectivity
it
issue,
is,
yeah.
it is.
No, and that's what we talked about, maybe getting a new sign or.
Because I was thinking, and I don't want to get off into a parking discussion. If you think about Southwest Harbor. There are hardly any parking spots on Main Street in Southwest Harbor. All the
Right.
parking is off the main street.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I just think we need to draw some lines
Yeah.
together.
But the harbor committee did a big study. Have they finished that?
I think they have, Jamie, actually.
There are no spots at the harbor. Right now, during the day.
Right. No, yeah.
But your concern is more Main Street businesses.
Yes, if you drive down Main Street, it's very difficult to, and I
Right.
agree with you that if you found your way somewhere, so there's two
Right.
complaints. One is
Right.
the 2 hour parking limit not being enforced, and the other is
I
finding
would,
your way.
just one observation. I watch because I live down that way. I watch confused people get to the end of Main Street all summer long because there is no real signage about, they go down Main Street and it's now what? It's one way. I can't go back.
Right.
What do I do? And there's nothing really to indicate
Go home.
what to do. Well, they can't figure out how to go home. They can't way out of the box.
Yeah, and I don't know.
That's a
if that-
signage
if-
issue, I think.
But we have a lot of signage and it's fascinating to me how people don't even read the signage we have, so.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I have the answer.
Um,
I had a thought just for the golf cart issue. It seems to me it would be a win-win for Tim Harrington and Asticoon
Yeah.
to have some sort of vehicle.
Right.
And my thinking would be, he could do a lot of goodwill is obviously his guests take priority, but if they're open slots,
Yeah,
people could just hop on board.
he's actually on my list of contacts.
And you might check in with Erica Ruby Mitchell
Oh, I've
because.
talked to her a lot.
Good, because she might have already raised the idea with him, but.
Not that exact
No,
idea,
okay,
but
all
yeah.
right.
But he's gonna need to get his guests into the,
Yeah.
into the.
And he's gonna be
village.
open a much bigger window than.
Oh, really?
Georgiana,
I
before you
think
get
he's hoping to be open
too
later.
far down that
I'm not going very far, but go.
well, I just, you want to investigate insurance, because I think you may find that.
Oh, I'm not suggesting a golf cart.
Oh, okay,
I'm just opening
Right.
up.
right.
No, I'm not suggesting a golf cart. I'm just saying if she came back and was like, this,
Her original suggestion, was just a whole bunch of golf carts. So you just grab a golf cart.
And drive it yourself.
and drive
no,
it
that
yourself.
wasn't
And
what I
that-
was thinking.
That, I don't think is what.
I was
Doesn't
thinking
even work on a golf
a
course.
shuttle.
Right, then we got into the golf cart train.
Yeah.
concept.
Oh, I forgot about that, yeah.
No, I certainly don't know enough to propose anything.
But I think, Rick, you're right, and not only would that be a benefit to the hotel, I would think that would be a benefit to the Main Street businesses. who have
Absolutely.
an Interest in that.
Absolutely, and there should be a way they could cut a deal that's beneficial.
Suspecting those people are gonna be pretty deep pocketed. If you use the
Yeah.
Claremont as an example, it's a pretty expensive accommodation, so there'll be some people with some money.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, comprehensive plan, Megan, you're on that
I
committee, right?
well, no, I haven't heard a word. Is that committee even like?
Well, I think, I think July and August, it's gonna be pretty mute. to tell
Okay.
the truth.
Is
So
there,
hopefully-
is there a time frame within which this is gonna be done?
Cause I submitted a, what do you call it?
An
Like a-
application
Yeah,
to-
to be
to be
on
a-
the committee.
yeah.
I haven't heard anything, so I figured things were just going slowly.
Well, all that stuff pretty much gets shut down in July and August, because a lot of the members just say, we can't do it, like we've shut down the Luso committee for the summer.
Yeah.
Because they don't want, they just can't come, so the comprehensive plan committee will follow that same thing, when you get into September, they'll start to gear it up.
Okay.
Okay.
But July and August, forget.
I think that you and I have both applied to be on
Yeah.
that committee and
You
have
haven't heard
both been
either.
approved. No, I read it in the town minutes.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Oh, I didn't know. Okay. Oh, good to know. Okay.
It hasn't started yet.
Okay.
You might also see what else you've been approved for. You have no idea.
You'll be surprised what committees you're on.
Exactly.
Hey, don't miss a meeting if you don't want to be president.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. Hopefully we'll have more in October.
I think that Noel will be leading up that committee eventually, and so when he gets into it in the fall, probably gather people together. And I think they wanted to get through the whole ordinance issues at the town meeting to start with.
I wonder, cause I remember we had that meeting early this year or late last year where Noel came and gave a whole spiel about the plan, and I thought it was gonna roll out in the spring, but I wondered if all of
Yeah.
that.
Jim Bright wants to speak. Let's see, he's gonna.
There he is.
Jim.
Hey, Jeff,
You're muted.
you're muted.
Oh, there he is.
I think you're on there.
He's done.
Very
that.
good.
Yeah.
Not very well.
Just turn your volume up a little bit.
It's very muffled. I wonder if it's your earphones or something. Hmm. That's worse.
That's worse.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't hear you at
We
all.
can't
now.
hear.
Try the earphones on. We
Yeah,
got- we
put
heard-
the earphones back. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now you're much better.
The Harbor Committee actually got the town to line where the farmer's market goes.
Yeah.
And that added about 15 more spaces down there. And they looked at creating parking on Huntington Way or whatever it's called. And to do that, you would have to add a whole sidewalk and everything. So people, if you're gonna have parking on one side of the road, you have to have a sidewalk for them to walk on, not down the middle of the road. So that's where that
Okay,
ended up. But I think just by adding getting those lines in that farmer's marketplace is gonna help. You're always gonna have too many cars. It's just, build a parking garage and it's gonna be full. So,
Tim, do you know, do we still have the problem that was discussed last year? Where people would just park their cars there and then,
Get on the bus.
yeah, and use up all those spaces?
I don't
You
know if
gotta be-
anybody's kept track of that for quite a while.
I don't.
I think
believe
what stopped a lot of it is they quit sending the bus to Jordan Pond. And it leaves from Northeast and goes to Brown Mountain.
Mhm.
So that cut out a lot of people using it as a transit.
Mhm.
And I know you're down there all the time, George.
Yeah, I'll tell
I
you
haven't
who
seen-
fills most of the spaces. The Sea Princess has about 100 people a day, minimum, go out on those boats.
Hmm.
And if you look at the number of spaces down there, when that boat is out, that's where all those people park. You know, the Sea Princess.
Oh, yeah.
No,
I mean, I'm not saying it's bad that the Sea Princess is in business, but that's 98, like there were 98 people on the Sea Princess today while I was there.
But the Sea Princess has been operating for 50 years. If or more, right?
so the idea of meters, I know, I assume it's been discussed.
It was.
It was actually
Wow.
a study done by the University of Maine under Mike McDonald about doing that, and you can see where we are. So
Well, and again, I didn't mean to go down this path, but the complaint that I got, then, and actually this was Erica, Kathy and I had a long discussion, and we sent out a memo and a map, was really more about employees and people who work at the businesses using the 2-hour parking spaces instead of the further out lots. So we've kind
On
of
Main
had
Street. On Main Street,
we've had a campaign to get the people
Employees,
yeah.
to
That's good.
please ask your employees to not use these spaces.
Yeah.
Because the parking enforcement people aren't they can't, they have too many places to go to ticket every 2 hours.
So what if they concentrated on Main Street for a while, and then the word got out that.
I asked them to do that and he told me they were writing citations and I've got to call them again next week.
Okay.
Great ideas. Thank you.
To move the discussion to a somewhat different topic, since our last meeting, we've had town meeting and the short-term rental ordinance was defeated. And this committee has had discussions about that, so I just put that on the agenda to see if that is something we are still interested in having on our agenda. And if so, what direction we would want to take that discussion in. Martha's not here,
Well, I said that thing out around about Rockland, which reversed itself after 2 years. Their new proposal is sort of draconian. I don't see how that would work.
And they
But,
just defeated it.
there
was
but
a
it was 3-2. That was just
Yeah.
a select board.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3-2 though. So it's obviously a divided issue. But it does seem that if you get behind this, too far behind this issue, it gets away from you.
right, and, again, quoting the Quiet Side Journal, at least Lincoln thinks that in Bar Harbor, the statistics show that, in fact, the number of short-term rental units is going down. Since they,
Well, and one of the 3 people who spoke in favor of the ordinance at our town meeting was a woman from Bar Harbor saying, don't do it, you've got a chance not.
Yeah.
Or do it.
do it.
Yeah.
It's such a quagmire of
It
a
is
problem,
quite.
because I completely understand. I would never want to be on the other side of an argument from Rick Savage, you know? And there is a history of people renting houses and
Right.
it is a practical thing. I need to keep my house and I want to do this, and I get that. But the idea that any claims that people were saying that short-term rentals don't increase the cost of housing, that's just not So, I mean, you can't, how can you say that? Because it's market forces. If three people want to buy a house and it's selling for more than they're asking for, the prices are going up. So what we look at in our own tax bill that everybody just got, the price of everything has gone up because there's been a new valuation, and that valuation is based on what other properties like yours are selling for. And everything's going up, so everybody is paying higher taxes, and the mill rate has increased because we have a $7 million bill we're still paying for last year to get the fire department. Because we don't have ambulance people or volunteers, and
Right.
we need more people here.
It's just,
It's a
because we don't
big
have those people living in
circular
town to
thing.
volunteer. right?
Exactly.
Right?
So it has a huge impact on everybody's expenses via taxes. And I think that we also, the other implication of this is every time anybody hires anybody, you have to be able to pay enough to attract people so that they can live closer. So our school employees are probably as well paid as they can be. Town employees are as well paid as they can be. Any business that is hiring people like to fix your plumbing or electrical work, they're paying as much as they can, and it just increases everybody's cost all along the way.
Yeah, because we have to pay enough to make it worth commuting, so I call it a commuter premium on top of what you would normally expect to pay for a salary. You have to add an X amount on there, and the commuter premium is going to get worse because people are coming further out, they're pushing closer to Bangor now to find anything. So, and eventually you'll reach a point where you can't pay enough to get anyone to come down, and we're gonna reach that point fairly quickly, I fear.
I had someone complain to me, well, not complain, observe to me. That they've been in the Seacoast Mission. I said, well, there's never anybody there. And I said, well, the reason there are people there, but they don't work every day because the people who work there can't afford to live anywhere close to here.
Right.
So they're all commuting an hour and a half.
Yeah,
And-
who wants to do that on Route 3 in
And
the
if you're
summer?
commuting an hour, if you've got employees commuting an hour and a half, it makes a certain amount of sense to say, well, stay home 2 or 3 days a week and work from home.
Yeah.
You know what happens, Kathy, on this whole thing about the arguments, there's an old saying that the greatest enemy of the truth is not the lie, it's the myth. That's what we ran up against at that meeting, and it's almost impossible to dispel those myths.
And I say, there are plenty of properties around this town and this village in particular that are never gonna be appropriate or affordable for year-round housing. It's like, fine, yeah, and I understand their taxes are huge, so rent away for $8,000 a week, because that's not hurting the local or year-round population. But when you see houses in Sylvan City, Sylvan City, for instance, the last bastion of year-round housing going competitively, and many of them turning over into rentals, that's what's hurting us. And so all of these other little streets having that same impact. So I don't know if we can talk about zoning issues to say, you can have, and it's also, it is a business to rent out your house in a residential area. So, but can we say this area is okay, this area is not okay because for whatever,
Yeah.
because it's.
Of course, that's fine. Everybody will say that's great as long as I'm in the area where it is okay.
Exactly.
But to answer your question, I think, as far as I'm concerned for this committee, I don't think it should be something on our agenda all the time, unless something comes up. Where we took a position.
It is an economic sustainability issue because the consequence of it is there is nobody left to work here.
Yeah.
And that's why we don't have a volunteer fire department anymore. It's why we don't have a volunteer ambulance service anymore. It's why one of the reasons that businesses close in the winter time, because part of it's they don't have enough business, but another part of it is they don't have any workers. So and we had businesses, the last couple of years in the summer that had restricted hours because they.
Yes.
That's right, I remember that.
So it is an issue, and I guess the other thing. I don't know. The extent to which the problem is short-term rentals. Because another aspect of the problem are just people who are buying these houses as summer residences.
Right.
They're not renting them out, but they're not living in them either. So those come off the market. And that inflate, and they can pay more money for them, so that it just cuts out working people right out of it.
Yeah, I think the summer people are a big part of the issue that doesn't get recognized so much, that they're buying more and more houses that.
Yeah, there was an article in another paper in Maine that said that was more of an issue than the rental.
Well, if you look at the demographics, I mean, we've been here, April's been here long. We could name 10 families that all grew up in one house and now
Have 10
they've all
houses.
grown up and now they have 4 or 5. And that's not gonna change.
Right.
The
Yeah.
Democrat, so we're, you know,
And an
as
ordinance
6
on
houses,
summer
you know, if we get
rentals,
them, it would be great. But it's, you know, we may win the battle, but we're still losing the war because there are just too many people who want to be here.
And that's why projects like us or anything that Island Housing Trust does in our town.
Yeah.
Is the solution you have to go to, because those houses are gonna have covenants on them, so they cannot be sold
Yeah.
for vacation rentals or summer use.
Well,
They have to live there.
then again, you know, there may be ultimately, this may be a zoning issue. So we say, okay, we got to have areas where we have affordable housing.
Well, and zoning is usually an important part of a comprehensive
Well, the state-
plan,
the state
so.
mandates that, and of course, your area down there is what we've designated.
As village residential
Right.
one, and that is designated as a higher density growth area. Yeah.
So the state is starting to get involved, but I don't know how effective they're going to be, we'll see.
So well, I think I've said this before, but I'm on the board of the nursery school now, and I went up and introduced myself to Heather Dorr at the elementary school, who really is a very impressive person, and just talked about how, you know, we don't have enough children in this town to be competing with each other, so how can we work together? And one way is kind of housing, and then I started thinking more that, you know, we need to advocate instead of just discuss the housing issue. And one change that I think would be important is, instead of focusing on the number of units that we're trying to build, that 365, let's focus on the kinds of people who would go into those houses, who can't live here, who need that kind of housing, teachers and firemen, and, you know, because if you focus on the buildings, the occupants are faceless, and so they get easily demonized as,
Yes.
you know. You can't believe what's gonna happen in those places. They might have barbecues, I heard.
Pizza
But I think if it's suddenly, or, you know, the teacher at the elementary school, or the person who sells you something on Main Street as the focus rather than the building, it would, I think it would make a start of a difference.
The librarian, I mean, the
Yeah.
town, the
Yeah.
library bought a house for the librarian
Yeah.
to keep the librarian.
And great criticism for people. One person said to me, where'd they get that money? You know, like, and, because they paid a lot of money for it.
So,
Well, and the morale issue, I mean, we live on Summit, and, you know, just in the last year, the house next to us and the house sort of diagonal from us both switched to short-term rentals, and those had been year-round homes,
Wow.
and just, and the house that, it was one of the Browns' homes, so there were all the kids in the yard and the fence, and it was great to see, you know,
Yeah.
say hi or whatever, and now it's just the.
Yeah, it's different, isn't it? Yeah, you know, it's a different dynamic. It changes the character of the
does.
neighborhood.
Yeah,
For
Well,
sure.
what it really changes is community.
exactly, yeah.
I mean, that's what really suffers.
well, we probably aren't gonna solve this afternoon. And it's a problem everywhere, not just,
It's true,
I think it's particularly acute here, but it's a problem in many places.
Yeah.
In beautiful
Bangor, for
places in the
example.
world.
Yeah.
There's no affordable housing to speak of in Bangor anymore. So where our problem, one of our problems down here is we were able to weather that first wave of summer residents buying the houses because it was local residents selling them and then moving to Trenton or Lemoyne. So now they're moving to Eastbrook, right, and Franklin. And then they're moving out and out. And now there's nothing left. There's no place to go. All of our safety valve communities have now gone over into the unaffordable realm. And so where do we get our employees? We don't get them from there anymore. Because they're not there, the ones that are more wealthy.
Would it be appropriate for this committee just to come up with some kind of statement for the comprehensive plan to say,
Sure.
we, we believe, we see from an economic development point of view, this is the impact and it's hurting everybody. And come up with that. And I don't know if we want to do any kind of research or studies just on our town to, just look at the data, look at how many houses are selling, because I think that let's come up with the facts so that people aren't relying on the myth.
My observation at town meeting was,
Facts and myth.
everybody knows there's a problem.
Yeah,
It's not like people were getting up, it's not like Rick Savage was getting up and saying,
no,
I don't see a problem here. He
Yeah.
sees the problem, he doesn't like the solution,
Yeah.
but he sees the
Right.
problem.
yeah,
So. Some point, it may be good to get those voices, the respected voices that were in opposition in the room and say, what would you support? What could you
I
support?
think one of the things that doesn't get focused on as much, Rainy Bench did a very good presentation of talking about issues that were intractable on this island at various times, and they eventually got solved, and one was logging, one was autos, and one was the Ku Klux Klan. I thought it was interesting. But the issue to me is what I call issue fatigue.
Yeah.
And, we've been talking about housing but you gotta keep at it. That's how these intractable issues eventually got up. People just kept banging away at it, so.
So I had someone come up to me after the annual meeting and thank me for talking and saying, because the vote was closer than I thought it was gonna be, and saying, and it had been packed. I remember Rick said, gee, there are a lot more people that I haven't seen here in a long time, but saying, thank you, because most of us we're too afraid to stand up in the face of the barrage, but for speaking for those of us who feel that way. So I didn't know I was, but so I think there's more support than you would think.
Yeah, and you may be able to garner more support by just making a few modifications.
I think that this issue is not one of intractability. Every argument I heard, except for the mythic ones, were things that I thought the select board had tried to take into account.
Correct.
So I thought a lot of those questions really had been answered.
Yeah.
But they hadn't penetrated.
And there are still some, I mean, there are still some situations that sort of fell between the cracks of that ordinance. That caused people to oppose it.
Yeah.
I am curious, if Martha were here, where her head is as far as.
I don't know, she was pretty discouraged.
She was discouraged, yeah.
What else do we have?
Okay, we've got to finish up because there's another meeting coming in here. So, the next item on the agenda was just consideration of the source for funding of committee expenses. That's been on the agenda. I don't propose to talk about that tonight, but it is an issue. There's several $1,000s left in the general operating account, but that's getting slowly used. We didn't get any money from the town. So at some point, the way I look at it, this committee is going to expire if the town doesn't want to. People of the town don't want to.
The only
Allocate
warrant that
some-
lost was that $5,000.
$5,000. So,
Who opposed it?
well,
We
the
lost in the warrant committee.
It did.
Yeah, I know, but
the argument was,
Katrina was.
the argument was, well, they've got all this money in their bank account for the skating rink. Why don't they use some of that? And my counter to that was, because that's not what that money was for. It wasn't donated to pay directors and officers liability insurance. It was donated to build a skating rink.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Could we come up with a budget for what those expenses are?
Yep.
And we'll figure out, where the expenses are coming from and if they're,
there's only 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah, so it's not too hard to figure out what they are, and then let's,
Figure out exactly.
having
what they are.
concrete numbers would be helpful to figure out, you know, do we
It
ask the
varies.
town for more?
It varies a little from year to year, because for example, this past year, we had to file a full 990 for the Community Development Corporation because we raised more than $50,000. You have more than $50,000 in gross revenue,
Right.
it kicks you into a different category. That's not presumably gonna be every year.
Right,
Yeah,
Um,
I would
And that
encourage
kicks the
that.
accounting fees up.
And I say that because I think even in my own experience, when you think about, because how many people applied through that process, 30, 40, what was it? Through the.
the
It's a
third
lot.
party
Oh,
asks.
there was 30.
Yeah, I mean, and I face myself real misinterpretation with what the money was for and what, so I think they read the things really, and so the more clarity, like fly over with a banner and do it, because I struggle with that myself.
Yeah, well, the Bar Harbor Chamber got clobbered, you know.
Well, I'm just saying, not necessarily even the organization, but I think people assume, oh, well, it's all outlined on my form and I stood up and said it, everybody understood it. Well, it's the same thing as the short-term rental ordinance. People don't really understand what the money is going going in
Well, the
my
warrant committee-
experience.
I was
On
at
the
the warrant
warrant
committee
committee.
meeting and I spoke and I said just what I said tonight and it didn't.
Yeah, I hear you. I think they need a PowerPoint.
Yeah, it was a interesting conversation.
It's a euphemism.
You know, I've been there.
Rick, did you?
Yeah, this is an idea that probably shouldn't go into the minutes because it hasn't been talked about with the appropriate people, but I just wanted to get, I see Jim Bright's still on it, and I thought it'd be interesting. This is something, Abel, you and I talked about a long time ago. We've got in Northeast Harbor, we've got Hinckley's. We've now got this very upmarket Astico, which is coming on. And we've got Martha Stewart. And Martha Stewart likes to do things for the island. And I was thinking, how could we do something? And this is just a very simple idea, but it wouldn't cost much. And then what if Martha Stewart put her name on a cooking school for cruisers? And it could be housed on Hinckley yachts right in Northeast Harbor. And what I was thinking from the town's point of view is that you could have chefs from Astico. But part of it would be the chefs would take as interns local young people from the area to teach them not just how to cook on a boat, but how to become a chef. So it becomes sort of vocational. And there wouldn't be any new housing. There's no parking. There's not a whole lot of extras that would come with it. And the reason I don't want, nobody's talked to Martha Stewart.
You didn't call her?
I'm just curious from everybody's perspective, including the Harbor Committee, is that something that's just off the wall, or is that something that might be viable if the powers that be, Tim Harrington and Martha Stewart and Hinckley's thought it was a good idea?
I think it's a great idea.
Who would, so this would be without charge for the students?
The students they'd have to work that out, but that would be the idea. But the idea would be a cruiser, these are obviously upmarket cruisers, would book well in advance. It would be a pretty pricey tuition for whatever it is, 4 or 5 days or whatever makes sense. And part of the package is that they would get a dinner for 2 at the Astico. And they could book it in advance. They could then schedule their cruise because they knew they were going to be at the school July 28th through August 1st or whatever.
and so what's the economic development benefit of that?
Bringing cruisers in, number one. Number 2, if you can get local young people educated, that's an economic benefit because you're getting.
And they would be preparing the meals, you say? That's.
Or there would be, they would be helping to prepare the meals or so on. You could also get it involved where the the school would get all their produce from Beach Hill Farms or local places and things like that. I mean, there's a number of things you can do. From Hinckley's point of view, you know, there is nothing they want more than to get people down below in their boats. And if they can have, you know, a galley set up and so on, and you have cooks who know how to do good meals in small spaces. That would be part of it.
We talked about a variation on this several years ago with the possibility of
Mason's.
well, yeah, maybe, but it was the possibility of a culinary academy in the off season, like in the late fall.
April and I worked on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
It was to really build out the shoulder seasons, right? To do things that
Right.
would keep people here
So
longer.
you offer a package, you come and stay at the Astaku for a week and you go to a culinary school in Northeast Harbor and it's fall and it's beautiful and. Yeah,
This is sort of the cheap version. We don't have to build anything. We don't have to have real estate.
so,
But anyhow,
All right.
I just want to, Jim, are you still on there?
I am. I'm just thinking if you'd have to plan this out quite a long ways because come January 1st, when they start accepting reservations at the marina, it's, you know, people are sending in reservations at 12:01 New Year's. Right. So you would really, of course, it could be arranged that a certain number of moorings are reserved just for that. But I mean, it will take some, you know, planning, I would think out a couple years to bring something like this to happen. I think it's a great idea. Whether the chefs at the Astaku could teach somebody how to cook down below deck is another question altogether. But it's certainly an interesting idea, and I'm sure Hinckley would eat it right up with bringing one of their big jet boats and have a galley set up, and away you go. So
Yeah, and it would be sort of an interesting wrinkle for Jim Harrington. You know,
One person to talk to, I would think, would be Eliza Bishop, because that's Milk and Honey, because she's sorry, that's my phone ringing, but you can't hear it, and it's my children. She really is an imaginative, thoughtful, hardworking person, and she's here all year round, and I think she'd have a lot of good ideas. She just catered a thing that we did at the nursery school last night, and it was really
she might
fabulous.
not be a bad idea for this committee.
For the,
yeah,
Yes.
she would.
that'd be a great idea. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay,
Keep
I did
thinking.
promise we'd be out of here by 5:30. It's 5:18, so the last item was the vision statement. I think we talked about that, perhaps at the next meeting or a future meeting, take a look at that.
Can I just recommend we all take a look at it after this meeting and get you?
I wasn't sure, Kathy, you sent out, was there a?
Yeah, I wasn't
Yeah, there
sure
were
what you
like
got.
out
three
in the
different
other-
pieces of paper.
Yeah.
So
Well, what I saw from you was a list of different entities that we might engage with. And I thought, that doesn't look like a vision statement to
Did it
me.
not have at the top? Maybe I attached the wrong thing.
I think you might have, but it was more about housing. It was more about, and we were gathering people
It
together.
added, it said it's a thriving year-round community
Yeah.
enriched by, I've doodled on it, but
Yeah, at the top.
pressing
and then-
need for housing and local workers.
Which one is that?
I'm sorry, I'm a doodler.
So.
Certainly are.
Oh, this is. Okay, this is what I sent back, I think, this is what I sent in response.
Well,
to
that's what I
yours.
thought I sent. So if I didn't,
Okay,
that was
all
my
right.
mistake.
So I
Yeah.
think what
Yeah.
really came along was the
Just the
very
second
short
part of
thing
it. Yeah.
about,
Okay.
well, not this, it
I
was,
think it was about the
Leading
summer
into the-
gathering.
yeah,
I must have, when I.
This is the one that I thought looked closest to what,
to what we're talking
what
about.
we're talking
Yes, it
about.
is, that's what I,
May have called.
that's why I think
Attached
it
the
was
wrong
just the wrong
document.
attachment.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
okay,
Over the hill.
all right. That's why.
Hey, stuff happens.
Yeah, it's almost 8 o'clock. I gotta- I gotta go to bed. Okay,
You're not right.
is there any other business?
No, this has been a great meeting, really.
If
I
not,
I have one piece.
Because you're not secretary.
I think we all ought to give both Jamie and Dan a round of applause for an enormous. Think of all the things that have happened under their reign.
Think of how many times Dan said, okay.
one
My
more.
last year.
Only do it for one more year.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate that because if I came home tonight and was not off this committee, I'm probably in a major problem. So anyway, thank you all. So it's, I've enjoyed it, as I've said to Carrie and to Megan. I'm certainly still around and
Great.
to give them help, informal or otherwise, so. Okay, let's go back out in the heat. It's very comfortable here.
Yeah, right, cool it up, nice for you.
Thank you.
Nice heat pants.
That's just
Thank you, April.
my. official-
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I
Bye.
put that into.
Good night.
I can see you spend hours drafting paragraphs on it.
Yeah.
Is April here? or is she-
He really did have it, she's ready to hand you.
I thought she was in California when I asked her the question about the heat, because I was
She's
curious.
babysitting with her grandchildren, and then she's going to Philadelphia to see her mom, and then she's coming up here, I think, around the 18th or so.
Because I saw a weather map the other day, it looked like even in San Francisco, it was hot.
Yeah. Yeah, my mom.
Yeah, here.
Well, it depends which side of San Francisco you're on.
Right, right.
I'll send along.
But it was, it was in the red.